Hi, this is Ben Baxter with Accent Software. Again, bringing you a quick tip, this time specific to manufacturing for Business Central. So what I want to run through is high-level overview of the manufacturing setup. There's not too many choices in there, but you do need to know what they do because they have a big impact on the way the system operates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a search for manufacturing setup. You can use abbreviations, just make sure you don't go too short, because then you'll get other options that you may not want. So within manufacturing setup, and you don't have to be in a specific profile to see this, the starting time, ending time, that's up to you. So that's very specific to your business and when you operate. The preset output quantity, mine's currently set to expected quantity. I use that for various demos that I do. This is, again, a kind of business culture decision. If you're going to use something different, I would probably say 0 on the last operation. The last operation being the one that puts the finished product into inventory. So this has an impact on your quantity on hand of the good you're producing. So that would be a good one to have 0. The other operations, the subsequent operation 10, 20, 30, whatever the earlier operations are, they do not put product into inventory. They don't change your quantity on hand. So those you could leave as 0 if you want to be very, very specific with your reporting. But as long as you're 0 on the last operation, that helps prevent you from accidentally posting output to inventory. Show capacity in minutes. The majority of the companies we work with track down to the minute for machines and things like that for their setup and runtime, those sort of things. So this could be a company decision. If you track in hours, it would generally be between hours and minutes, but I would say the majority of companies we work with use minutes. These I always suggest have on across the board. Planning warnings when you're going to miss a shipment date. Document number, when you post entries from the production order, it uses the production order number in the ledger entry as the document number. That's nice for tracking and audit purposes. Dynamic low-level code. When I make changes to my bill of material, the system will automatically update what level or what depth of the bill of material that item is on, so that when I run my planning, it always calculates through all the different levels. When I turn this on for the first time, there is a function you should run called the calc low-level code. If you're turning it on for the first time, the dynamic one, run this calculate low-level code. In fact, you can run this once a year just to be sure that the system's keeping track of everything you need to. You really should only have to run it one time after you turn this on, but it doesn't hurt to run it anytime you feel like it. Cost includes setup. This is something you may change if you do not want your setup in your standard cost calculation. If you are including it, make sure you track your lot size on your item so that it factors in what your typical build quantity is when it factors in that standard cost. Okay, moving on to numbering. The number series that is selected for the most part doesn't have an impact, other than I would suggest between firm planned and released orders, use the same number series. The reason for this is the planned order numbers. This is what the MRP, the planning worksheet, will use when it makes suggestions. So you don't want this to impact your actual production order number. This is kind of a behind the scenes number that gets used, and it will increment very fast. The firm planned and released, this is generally what you're going to make your production orders into when you carry out your action. And so having them be the same, when you create the firm plan from planning, it assigns an order number. When you change the status of that production order from firm planned to released, you're letting the shop start working on it. By keeping the number series the same, that number won't change. And so you'll have a firm planned production order number, you change the status to released, the number stays the same. Eventually you'll change that released order to finished, the number stays the same. So by keeping these two number series the same, it allows that number to flow from firm planned to released to finished. No changes, easy tracking, easy audit. Okay, so that's my big thing with the numbering. The rest of them don't really matter that much, but these two, as well as the planned, have an impact on the system. All right, coming down to planning, we'll pull this up on the screen a little bit. Current demand forecast. If you're using a demand forecast, sales or production, go ahead and select it. That would be something that you would have default to your planning calculation, your regenerative plan, where it will drop that value into your options when you run your planning. So that's a good thing to have filled in if you're using planning. If you're not, it doesn't matter. Have these two checked on. So if you're using variance, go ahead and have use forecast on variance turned on. If you're using forecast, make sure you have on locations turned on. If you don't use this, the forecast will struggle with making proper suggestions to the planning when you calculate your regenerative plan. So a big important toggle to have turned on. Does not negatively impact anything having them turned on, even if you're not using them. So I would say go ahead and turn them on, help future-proof your system. The default safety lead time. This is a field that you'll also see on the item cards. This is the global value for this calculation. And what it does is it says, if I need to have the product available on the 15th, then I want to finish it 3 days early. So the safety lead time is the amount of time between when you plan to finish it to when you need to ship it. And this works on other parts of the system as well. If I buy it and sell it, if I have a planned shipment date, the system will plan to have it in inventory however many days or weeks are in the safety lead time prior to when I have to ship it. So it's a cushion that you add to your system to make sure that product is in your inventory prior to the actual day it needs to ship. If it is blank, it's 1 day. Just keep that in mind. All right, I suggest the allow default calculation for the overflow level. You can use other options for item SKU values, but the default calculation is pretty much what you need, and then you would control it further on the item card itself, because that can be very much an item by item decision. All right, combined MPS MRP calculation. I recommend having this turned on. It allows you to plan for both the direct demand, being your sales demand, the very front end, generally your finished good production, and then your MRP, your indirect demand. So because I have a sale, I'm producing a production order. That's the direct demand. Because I'm making a production order, I need to buy components. That's an indirect demand. By having this toggle turned on, I can calculate both in one shot. And the beauty of the planning engine is that you can plan every level of the bill of materials. So even if it's 9, 10, 20 levels deep, the system will plan through every single layer of that bill of material. And so you can have a very, very complex calculation. This will allow you to do it all in one shot. This is probably the most poorly used, I would say inaccurately used field in the entire system, components at location. If you have this set and there's a value there, if you have a single location, that is fully acceptable. That is about the only use of this field that we recommend. Okay, again, single location, have that location defined here. If you have multiple locations, this field should be blank. It allows the item card to represent the location that's defined here without needing a stock keeping unit. So again, having a single location, I only need an item card. I don't need a stock keeping unit card for that location because this treats the item card as the SKU for that location. Perfect for a single location environment, not great for a multi-location environment. You want your stock keeping unit, the location specific card for planning, to be used for that item. So this should be blank for any multi-location environments. If you don't use locations, this field really doesn't matter. I do encourage the use of locations. Even if you only have a single location environment, I still strongly encourage the use of a location because there's other controls you can use with the location being set. Moving on, dampener period for global value. This field, as well as the dampener percent, exist on the item cards if you need item-specific parameters. This is my global value. So what this does is if my demand is on the 15th and that customer comes back to me and says, hey, we don't need it till the 20th, but I have a 7-day dampener, it's going to ignore that the customer made a change. It'll produce it as if we needed it for the 15th. It'll hold it in inventory the extra 5 days to get it out on the 20th. The difference there is it's the period of time you're willing to hold the inventory before you want to reschedule your order. If my date change is within a certain threshold, so in my case, 7 days, if I'm within 7 days of when the original date is, again, moving further out in the future, then it will just leave it alone because it's within that threshold of when I'm willing to hold inventory. If it goes outside the 7-day window, then it's going to look at the rescheduling period on the item and determine if it's a reschedule or a cancel new suggestion. So it has to do with the planning suggestions and how it responds to data changes. Dampener periods do not have any impact when the date moves earlier in time. So if that customer said, I need it on the 15th, and then they said, you know what, I really need it on the 10th. So they move it earlier in time, this will have zero impact, okay? You can't hold it in inventory longer when you need it sooner. So in that case, you're generally going to get a cancel new suggestion to move that date earlier in time. The dampener period does not have any impact on dates moved earlier, only further out in the future. Default dampener percent, same thing. So if I have a quantity of 100 and they say we need 90 and my dampener period is 20%, then the system is going to say, okay, that's a 10% change. We're okay. We're going to hold on to that inventory. If they say I need 110 and the original was 100, well, then you're going to need a new order to make the additional. Okay, this is only decreases in quantity within a certain percent. So think of that as a decrease within a certain tolerance where you're willing to hold the excess. If you make to order, and if that customer doesn't want it, nobody else is going to want it either, then you want this set to 0 so that when there's a change in quantity, it creates a change quantity request in your planning to reduce it down to whatever that customer needed. So those are the manufacturing setup options within Business Central. I hope that was clear. I hope that gave you some better ideas on how to set up the system. If you want to be very specific and make sure it's accurate for your environment, reach out to us. At Accent Software, we specialize in helping apply the system to manufacturing businesses. So if that's you and you want to have a discussion about how you're using the system or how you're going to use the system, please reach out to us. I'll put our email and our phone number up on the screen. Otherwise, I appreciate you spending the time to watch our video. Please reach out to us, like our channel, subscribe to our channel, and get other tips for Business Central and usually manufacturing.